Hi, okay, now we have skull features. So this is our third installment in the lecture. Skull features are something that are really, really important. The majority of what we see changing in our ancestors are the features of the skull. So again, we have Lucy here, one of Lucy's ancestors, or one of Lucy's relatives, and we're going to notice some things about this particular skull. If you go to your PowerPoints, the first thing they talk about is the sagittal crest. Well, this skull lacks a sagittal crest. The sagittal crest is kind of that bony ridge that runs right down the center of the skull. And we find that on gorillas. We find that on some of the robust Australopithecines, and it looks kind of like a mohawk. So I have a little picture, a little drawing of it here, and you have one on your slides. So that would be a sagittal crest. It looks like again like a mohawk that made of bone, and that's for the chewing muscles to attach to. Next we have a sagittal keel, and again Lucy really doesn't have a sagittal keel. We see a sagittal keel in a species like Homo erectus, and that's where it looks kind of like the bottom of a boat. The sagittal keel is present here in this photograph, or in this drawing. And you can see how there's a small point at the top of the head. So if you turn it upside down, it does kind of look like the bottom of a boat. The supraorbital torus is definitely present in Australopithecus afarensis. Supra, above, orbital, the eyes, torus, a bony process. And you'll see that this supraorbital torus, or brow ridge, is very present in this individual. Now, receding symphysis. Oh, let me grab her chin real quickly. So, this is the mandible of Australopithecus afarensis, and what it's lacking is a chin. Even though I said let me grab her chin, she doesn't have one to grab. It's a receding symphysis. Now, we can think about some people that have very prominent symphyses. Anyway, Jay Leno, a very prominent chin. And that's something that only humans have. Only Homo sapiens have prominent symphysis. So these hominids all have a receding symphysis. Next would be postorbital constriction, as I follow along in the terms. And this is postorbital, so behind the eyes, constriction of bony process, constriction, the constriction or the pinching in of the bones. So this is where the frontal part of the skull is pinched in. Hence, they don't really have much of a frontal part of their brain. Cranial vault is also lacking. You really don't see a forehead. I mean, here, her head just goes straight back from here. But you'll notice that I have a vault on my head, a cranial vault. Her head would come up if she had a cranial vault, but that's lacking, so there's no cranial vault on Lucy. Now, pneumatic flaring is present on Australopithecus afarensis, and that's present here. These are areas where there were muscles that attached to hold the head upright, so that this ridge on the back, and you can see it really prominently here, this ridge is what we call pneumatic flaring, and the bones are pneumatized, so they had air in them, which would have lowered the amount of weight, and so the skull would have weighed a little less, but had more surface area for the attachment of the muscles to hold the head upright. An occipital bun is not found on Lucy, but if it was, it would have been found right along here and would have looked like just like a little bun, like a dinner roll stuck on the back of the head. And that on the occipital area helps to counterbalance the frontal part of the face, which it was very, very heavy in a species like Neanderthal. And that's where we find that occipital bun is on the back of Neanderthal skulls. And then a flat face is where we see this mid-face depression. So she doesn't have as much of a flat face as some other species, but some species, especially the robust Australopithecines, had a very flattened or dished out face. Mid-face prognathism, we can see it really clearly here. And this is where we have the jutting out of the front of the face. Get our tag out of the way here, put it on the other side. You can see the jutting out of the front of the face. This is this mid-face prognathism. And the prominent zygomatic arches, the cheekbones that are very prominent, and these again are areas where the chin muscles would go through and then attach at the top of the head. And then the last term on your list of terms is an endocast, and that's a cast of the interior part of the skull, and that's made when soil goes into, like sand will go into the interior part of the cranium as the cranium is fossilizing, and it will leave a cast of the inside of the skull so that we know the approximate brain size. We can also see anything that was left on the interior part of the skull, like any area of vascularization, leaves an impression on the inside of the skull. So we can see where the vascular system was, so we can see kind of what the brain looked like. And let me see, I think that's the last in that show. So take a look at those PowerPoint slides, and again, if you have questions, feel free to email me. Thanks.